My 11th Circle presents Cricbuzz Live, and first and foremost, the good news if you're tuning in just to find out about that. Yes, the match is very much alive and well thanks to the flip of the coin. Never have we had a more important toss, because had it gone Bangladesh's way and they were very clear that they would have batted first, that was the end of the road for Pakistan. It's still a long and winding road, but at least they're batting first and they have a chance to put on a mountain of runs and keep Bangladesh down to, well, more than 300 runs behind them. That's from Lords. In the studio, Zaheer Khan, Robin Uthappa. An uphill task, but at least that hill is still there.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the way they should perceive it, because it's a situation where they really need to put up a lot of runs and hope that they can really get Bangladesh all out as soon as possible. But in hindsight, when you look at it, they don't really have anybody else to blame but themselves. They if they turned up to the tournament at an earlier stage than they actually did after that India game, things wouldn't be as hard as it is for Pakistan.
Yeah, I remember Zaheer talking about that first game of the tournament when West Indies blew them away. We were saying, yes, it's early days in the tournaments, 2 points for West Indies, 0 points for Pakistan, but that net run rate could cost them, and it has.
And that first match, yes, and that kept them behind in the World Cup. So they were always going to be catching up with things.
Yeah.
And here today in the last match again, they were looking at, okay, what kind of equation they can have to go through, because always dependent on the other results, and that's something which was expected from them. But important thing is considering the kind of in between tumble which they have on the points table with regard to their form and in terms of the intent which was not shown, that they've recovered well. So that's something they should take pride in and look to finish on 11 points. I think finishing on 11 points is something which is the most important thing according to me. Whether you qualify, don't qualify, that's fine. They had the opportunity against New Zealand as well. There can be 10 things you can look back and say that, okay, we could have done that. But the first and foremost is to get a win under your belt, get to that 11 point, and then look back and see what are the positives, what are the negatives, what we could have done differently, how we can plan for the next World Cup, because this is pretty much done. I think today, if you're talking about Pakistan scoring 450, then that means the wicket is a really good track. And to get people out on, unless you have luxury of having completely different wicket for the first innings and then give completely different wicket for the second innings,
wouldn't they like
that? That is something which will give them a chance apart from winning the toss. So the winning the toss was important, because all these talks would have gone out of the window if they were fielding first. But now the fact that they are batting first, yes, they should get as many as possible. But the chances of this happening is very slim. The 300-run margin is huge margin.
39 all out.
Exactly. 350 is a kind of total you can say that yes, it's possible.
That, that's a possible score.
And then if you were saying maybe 150-run margin, again, you can think about it. But the only thing that looks feasible is if 450 and then 321 runs, but those are just massive numbers to put on the board. But Zaheer mentioned 10 things to look back on. I think, yes, there may be 10 things, but of them, 2 things would be critical. We mentioned one of them, Pakistan, West Indies. That's how the tournament started for them. 105 all out, just 21 overs. They looked as if they hadn't even turned up to the tournament. And at that point, West Indies looked as if, whoops, dark horses. They're in the semi-finals. All of us had put them in the semis that day. Second game, the big one. India versus Pakistan. Yes, there may be a gulf between the two teams in terms of pure talent on the field, but it was the margin of victory again. 89 runs with Duckworth-Lewis. Without Duckworth-Lewis, it could have been even larger. So I think these are the two they look back on, and there was, of course, a lot of backlash, be it social media or back home for them. The one thing in their favour is they bounced back well, and their results after that have been magnificent. If only.
Yeah, that's what they're going to feel. I think they're going to feel hard done by. Also, that abandoned game against Sri Lanka, they would have given themselves a great chance to win that game, because they were coming off a big win against England. So that would have meant a lot for them. So that game could also be a difference. Yes, we drew a lot of parallels to 1992, but that game was critical for them. I think that game, if they played that game and gone ahead and won it, they again wouldn't have found themselves in that situation. They would have probably been in a better mindset when they came to play against India. So, they would have been a little more confident, a little more turned on. and they would have been even more competitive. I don't think the result would have been any different, but it wouldn't have been as embarrassing as it was for them in that game. But having said that, I think both teams will play for pride. I think both teams will want to finish the tournament on a high. They wouldn't want to go out there and just because Pakistan's not going to qualify. It's not like I think they'll go out there and just play lacklusterly. But I think they'll go out there and play really good cricket and be a great game to watch.
One more I'll bring in there, the game against Australia, because we gave them such a good chance because they had restricted Australia. Remember, they got, what, 5 for 50 in those last 10 overs when Australia were batting. And they had a good chance when they were chasing, and they lost 5 wickets between 26 and 50. And just have a look at this. This is again another key factor. Between 26 and 40, 94 for 5 while they were in control of the game. So this is another one of the game.
So after that only they made that change, isn't it? Getting Harris Sohail back in that batting lineup, because that was a concern, and this was something which had not happened once. It had happened a couple of times in the similar passage of play. They had lost wickets, and that's something which brought about the change in the batting lineup. They've tried Asif Ali to start with. Shoaib Malik was there, and then as they went along after a few matches in the tournament, they figured that, okay, what is the right kind of playing 11. So now last 4 games, so including this one, they've not made any changes in the playing 11. So that's something which is another indicator of how teams go about it. When do you change team? When someone is not in form, or there is a forced change.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't see teams changing playing 11s. Maybe one tactical change, but you won't see too many changes in playing 11. We've seen it with New Zealand also.
They started the tournament 6 in a row.
When did they made the change?
Yeah,
when they face some losses. So that's usually the dynamics of how the game is played and how teams go about their business. Yes, tactical change, maybe one change is allowed tactically, or 2 changes looking at the situation and the conditions. But when you have too many changes, that the team has been up and down, or they've come off losses.
Yeah, I think that's when post-India-Pakistan is when they got Harris Sohail back in there, and it made a huge difference. With all respect to Shoaib Malik, it just showed that little extra spark in there. And
well, yeah. So I think these are issues that should be addressed. The fact that they played cricket in Britain, all over UK, they should have figured out these issues before they got into the tournament. They should have had at least their first 12 in place, and that just a one or 2 replacements, or first 13 in place, where for tactical changes you can have 1 or 2 changes.
That's actually a great point, because they actually played the whole full series.
They went there a good 45 days before the
5 one-days. So they possibly were in the best possible scenario leading up to World Cup in terms of understanding the conditions and having their strategies in place. And the squad selection as well.
Yeah.
But if you look at that tour and the World Cup, there were so many changes from that squad which toured England just before the World Cup to the World Cup
Final
selection.
World Cup.
Correct. Yeah. So that makes, as in, so you can't come into a World Cup trying to chop and change along the way, right? And then when you get hit in that first game by such a big defeat, it's going to affect the psyche, and that's when they should have probably been a little more patient with a guy like Harris Sohail. They should have actually given him 2 or 3 games before they decided to drop him. You drop him like from the get-go, just after 1 game, not sending the right message to the entire team.
yes, absolutely. And you saw that the history in that period, including that series, the build-up, 1 out of 14 they had pretty much won, and then they've won 3 in a lot, 3 together in the World Cup when it actually started after that India-Pakistan game. But remember, once again we reiterate, over 400 they need to make, so maybe you need to reiterate with the kind of changes you may need to make to your My 11 Circle team. Yes, it's very batsman heavy, but you need to pick the possible batsman. Someone who might score 150, 160 would be a good pick for today, and I suspect Sourav Ganguly, yes, with his Dada Kavada, will also be keeping an eye on that score and hence picking those right players. But you pick it and 5 times the amount of cash. Bangladesh too. Let's not count them out of this game. They'll be playing for plenty of pride. They know that they were semi-final contenders for the longest time, and there's old rivalry. They beat Pakistan in 1999, the last time the World Cup was played there. So they'll have memories of that. What about their playing 11? They've made a couple of changes. Of course, one was Mahmudullah. It was an expected change. The moment he was fit, he was going to come back in instead of Shabir Rahman. And Mehdi Hassan with that extra spinning option coming in for Rubel Hossain. This looks a nice settled side. Probably their best 11.
Well, yeah. As in, I really wish someone like Rubel Hossain works on his batting, because he needs to be up. He needs to be in this in 11. Because if anyone looked even remotely quick in the previous game Bangladesh played, was Rubel. You know, they were bowling it, when he bowled it in the right areas, he was hurrying the batsman up just enough, which you didn't see the others doing, including Shaifuddin or Murtaza, outside of Mustafizur. So, you know, so you would like that, but otherwise I think this team is great. I feel, honestly, as a cricketer, I feel quite bad for this side, because they looked, you know, ready to go into the knockout stage of this tournament. They had 2 abandoned games, which have obviously cost them. That Sri Lanka, I think they had a Sri Lanka game that was abandoned.
Yeah. They have one.
That's right.
One game?
One abandoned, yes.
Okay.
One. That's the one washout against.
Yeah, they would have really,
you
know, backed themselves to win that game. And again, if they had won that game, if they played that game and won it, things would have been different. You know, even that Australia game, you know, they could have won it, but I think, you know, the Australian bowlers have been, you know, given
286 against India.
Yeah. Well, 286 against India as well, you know. That was a close game. They needed one more person to fire at that top order. Generally, it's Mushfiqur and Shakib or Tamim that stitch up a big partnership. They had those 50-run partnerships, but they need 100-run partnership to actually chase that. And then Bhumi came and did his magic in the end, which obviously helped us win that game.
Zaheer, if you have to assess their performance at this stage of the tournament, now we pretty much know who the semi-finalists are going to be. They've had performances against 3 out of 4 semi-finalists, who they've pushed. England batted them out of the game, but that was different. Australia, New Zealand and India, they've pushed them all, and that'll give them great satisfaction.
Absolutely, there is no doubt about it. You know, and that's why I'm happy with the way Bangladesh have gone about their business. You know, no one really expected expected them to do so well in these conditions. I think, you know, what was really going against them was the fact that they don't have the bowling lineup for these conditions. You know, so when you don't have the bowling lineup to restrict teams on these conditions, you're always catching up with the game. And the batting lineup also, yes, they had the experienced batting lineup, but no one was really clear that whether they will be able to do a great job. So, you know, so you actually not, you don't just have to do a good job, you also have to compensate for your lack of sting in your bowling. As far as seam bowling is concerned, you know, subcontinental conditions, they are very good. On spin friendly conditions, they are very good because they have the options with which they can control the game. But here they planned it well, and I think that's something which they should be very happy with, and that's something which I enjoyed watching, that they are okay to give 320 runs. That was their plan, because they're backing their batting lineup to get those runs, and they've done it. They've done it consistently in the tournament, and like you rightly said, New Zealand, India, Australia, against any team they were ready with a plan, had that belief, and in the team also they had that belief of winning matches, and they pushed each and every team, and that's why, you know, that not playing that match against Sri Lanka will hurt them more, because they knew that they're playing so good that they would have been able to beat Sri Lanka in that match if it had happened. And then things would have been completely different. Then they just had to win today's game and go through, because they would have been on 13 points if they win today and count that match as win.
I honestly believe the only reason they didn't win against the top 4 sides of the semi-finalists today is their lack in their bowling lineup. They gave too many against high quality sides, and high quality sides will take advantage of weaker bowling attacks. And outside of Shakib and Mustafizur, there's really nobody there who can, like, you know, unfortunately, Mehdi Hassan's been good, but they don't have other fast bowlers who can really, you know, crank up the pace and keep it quiet, be a little penetrative in that sense. And they've really missed that. That's the only number they've missed. And I think right now, fast bowlers in Bangladesh would be like the ones who actually can bowl quick. You know, those guys will be in high demand over the next year.
And there are a few of them, but it would be a radical suggestion to say that, you know, Mashrafi has been an inspirational leader, but, you know, they did miss about 40% more from him on the field as a bowler.
Well, but that was pretty much understood.
Yeah.
So they were looking at a bigger picture, and it's a team sport, so you want everyone to be inspired, you want everyone to contribute and be upbeat. So at times, you have to make that compromise. Yes, Mashrafi has been managing himself, but he's not managing just now. He has been like this over the last maybe 3-4 years, but it's just that the kind of effect he has with this team and the kind of role which they're looking at, because I feel similar, like Bangladesh, Afghanistan, you've seen it in the past with Sri Lanka. Arjuna Ranatunga had a role to play for the longest time. He actually shaped that whole cricket team. So similarly, I think Mashrafi has done a fantastic job in terms of shaping these players into believing that they can win matches.
Yeah.
Into making a team which is going out there to win matches, not just going out there and thinking about good performances.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way I look at these teams, and that's why I'm so happy with the whole performance of Bangladesh as a group.
And Zaheer, you're not the only one, because their coach too has been delighted, Steve Rhodes, with the performance overall. And this is what he had to say: if we beat Pakistan, I think we've had a very good World Cup, even though we've not qualified. And I say that because the other teams, some of the big teams that we played against, and we mentioned those, we've had close-ish games against them, India, Australia, New Zealand being them. We've pushed them, Australia, India. We didn't have a great game against England. We know that. You're allowed that out of 9 games, apart from that magnificent 100 by Shakib. But generally, the games we've played, we've been in the contest. And that, I think, is what Zaheer Khan was saying as well. They're not just here to compete. They're here to try and win. But let's go back to the toss. This game, of course, for very different reasons, was all about winning the toss and batting first. But there has actually been a shift, a radical shift since the start of the tournament in terms of batting first and batting second. Now, in the first 25 games, of course, you've had 3 abandoned games. There was one which was also abandoned with a toss. Teams that won the one toss and batted was 4, one toss and put the opposition was 18. Look at the quick flip around in the last few games, and there's been a huge difference. Match results, let's go one forward to that. 1 batting first in the first 25 games, 11-10 pretty much equal, but the big change is 14-3 batting first. So is this trend, apart from the mathematics of today's game, going to go till the end of the tournament?
Don't show these stats to the semi-finalist captains at all. Too much pressure on them. But yeah, I think it's a testimony of exactly where and how the pitches are behaving, right? So you know that in the fresher wickets in the first part of the I was going to say IPL, first part of the World Cup. So but later half of the World Cup, what tends to happen is that wickets get tired, and the teams have been quick enough to pick it up. You need to be sharp enough to pick it up, and they picked it up immediately. And you've seen the change in results. You win the toss, it essentially means you're giving yourself the best chance to win the game. And it happens a lot in India when we play domestic one-day matches, because all these games are day games and they start at 9 o'clock in the morning. In the east of India at 8:30 in the morning. So the pitch is like there's a lot of moisture on the wicket. So essentially, if you win the toss, you know that you're going to put the opposition in. They'll have to struggle for the first 25 overs, and then it ends up becoming a one-sided game, is what I'm trying to say. So similarly, a lot will be dependent on the toss in the knockout stages. Unfortunate that's the case, but it is what it is.
In fact, we were talking about teams picking it up as the tournament went along. This is one of the things Virat Kohli had said right at the beginning of the tournament, that there's going to be a World Cup of 2 halves. As the tournament goes on, pitches are going to become drier, a little bit slower, and therefore chasing anything more than 250 will be tough.
No, I think also for the fact that it rained quite a lot in that first half of the tournament, and that was a lot of calls were condition based calls of bowling first. You had how many washouts in the first 25 matches?
We had four washouts, 1 with a toss, 3 without.
So that's exactly was also those stats suggesting. So if you put those no results and the washout games and the rain affected games to that, then also it tells you a story that the conditions were favoring bowling. There was a lot of moisture in the wicket, so teams were opting to bowl first, and then the wicket was getting a bit easier to bat on later. So that was the thought process. As the tournament has gone by, I think what the shift has been is the weather has been fantastic. We've seen a lot of clear skies and sunny days. And when the days are sunny in England, that's what we often talk about. If you go to England, the weather chat has to happen. So even those in those stats, you have to take into consideration how the weather has changed and how the wickets are playing because of that. So in England, you'll more often than not see that they don't water the wickets that much because they're always worried about, okay, the weather might change, it will rain. So when it doesn't rain at all, you will see the wickets a bit on the drier side. Like you've seen some reverse swing also. Now, these kind of things you never used to see earlier. Like, in England, you hope that the ball is not going to do reverse swing. Here we've seen that because of the dry conditions, and that is another factor which has made teams opt to bat first as it gets very slower later.
One more quick point I'm going to just chuck in here, Robin. Along with all the factors of the rain and the pitches and the weather, etc., is it also that when you get to the business end of the tournament, you're talking about the pressure games, the knockout almost games, and therefore runs on the board become more important?
So knockout games actually obviously put up a lot more pressure on each individual within a group, because you know that if you muck that game up, then you're out of the tournament. And you don't want to do that, and you go with the intention of putting out your best performances. But having said that, no one's thinking about it too much, but the ones who tend to think about it more often than not tend to worry about not failing, and which leads to that. But it definitely does put that pressure factor does come into play. But again, putting up more runs on the board and then defending that score in this scenario in England, given the situation, yes, I think that's what any team would want to do. But otherwise, what would have happened is you would have wanted to, in pressure games, you would want to do what you'd want to bowl first if that was your strength. If you backed your bowling attack, then you would probably want to defend the score. But if you backed your batting side, then you would prefer bowling first.
Fair enough. I like the term batting attack for now, because today the game is all about a batting attack. It's not just about a batting lineup, because they've got to put on 1 million runs and then defend that. But let's also look at our attack man, Joy Bhattacharya, with his questions. He comes hard at you with some real toughies. Today, 4 out of the last 5 names on an Indian Test cricket list are Ajinkya Rahane, Rahul Dravid, Saurav Ganguly and Mohammad Azharuddin. Which name is missing and what is the list about? Just follow that and you can, I think, figure out a bit of a pattern in there. Answer that with hashtag Cricbuzz Live. Of course, we have our My 11 Circle expert couch. Now, who's going to dare to go 450 today? Anyone going to go even close? Because we know they're going to score.
One prediction which is going to come true is they're not going to score 450.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So
give us start from there.
Can we predict that? Can that be my prediction? Whatever you all predict, they're not going to score.
Okay, so we got give us
Wicket at Lords has played really well.
The producer's telling me no.
It has. It's played well.
Wicket at Lords has played well, so you can go higher. And
yeah.
The higher number which I'm thinking is 335.
Bangladesh.
335.
Yeah.
So you're talking 39 all out, okay?
I'll say 350 because of Bangladesh is bowling.
Yeah. 335, 350. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going 400. They're going to go hard, and because they're going to go hard, I think they're going to lose wickets. So not cheaply, they're going to still make some.
I thought because you're wearing red pants and green.
No, this is Bangladesh's red today.
That's why. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because of that, they're going to get out early.
He's made it very evenly today. Green shoes.
I like it. Like the colours. Like the colours.
All right. He likes the colours. Okay. Let me come back to my prediction. I'm going to go with 290. 290. They're going to give it a valiant chase. 290. Slow and steady. All right, that's what you have for you.
You don't have faith in your team.
Huh?
290.
Yeah.
Come on, bro.
No, too little?
You don't have faith in your team.
Come closer to us. Come on. He's hustling. Even now he's hustling, Zach.
I'm worried about my players in my 11 circle.
He's saying Pakistan is going to go try too hard and get out early.
Don't you think that's a danger, genuinely?
So 290 is early. So if that is early, then they might score 450 by your prediction.
Okay, that was my genuine point actually, because sometimes if you're thinking 450, you don't end up getting there. But anyway, I'm going to stick to that. We're going to be back to see in the 15th over, they pretty much need to be about 150. Will they be? We'll find out in Cricbuzz Combox. Otherwise, everything that happens at the end, My 11 Circle presents Cricbuzz Live.